Stop eating what you think are healthy foods right now, because what I'm about to share with you could be the most important 28 minutes of health information you'll hear this year. And I say that not to be dramatic, but because most doctors, including many cardiologists and neurologists, are still not telling their patients over 60 about this. There are 4 foods that millions of seniors eat every single day, foods that have been promoted as healthy for decades, and these foods are quietly triggering silent strokes that are destroying brain tissue while you sleep, while you read, while you spend time with the people you love. Let me tell you about Harold. Harold was 73 years old, a retired accountant from Portland, Oregon. He did everything right. He exercised 5 days a week, he followed his doctor's advice, and he carefully chose what he thought were the healthiest foods at the grocery store. But Harold started noticing something strange. He would forget names of people he'd known for years. He'd walk into a room and forget why he was there. His daughter noticed he was having trouble following conversations. When Harold finally went for a comprehensive brain scan, his neurologist found something terrifying. Harold had experienced multiple silent strokes, small areas of dead brain tissue scattered throughout his brain like dark spots on an MRI. And the most shocking part? Harold never felt a thing. No chest pain, no numbness, no warning signs. The damage had been accumulating silently for years. I'm Dr. William Lee, a vascular biologist, physician, cancer researcher, and scientist who has spent over 30 years studying how food affects the human body at the cellular level, specifically how what you eat impacts your blood vessels, your brain, and your risk of stroke. I've worked with some of the world's leading research institutions, and I've seen firsthand in my clinical practice what these silent strokes do to people's lives. And today I'm going to reveal the 4 foods that are causing this damage, foods sitting in your refrigerator right now that you believe are protecting your health, when in reality they are setting you up for cognitive decline, loss of independence, and possibly dementia. A landmark study published by researchers at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health and Massachusetts General Hospital, tracking over 62,000 adults aged 60 and older for a period of 14 years, found something extraordinary and terrifying. Adults who regularly consumed specific foods promoted as heart healthy showed a 47% higher incidence of silent cerebral infarctions, the medical term for silent strokes, compared to those who avoided these foods. Let me translate that out of medical language. These people were having brain damage, permanent brain damage, without knowing it. And the foods responsible are ones that doctors have been recommending for decades. Now, number 4 on this list is going to shock you because it's something almost every senior in America has been told to eat for breakfast. And number 1, the most dangerous food I'm going to reveal, is something that nearly 70% of adults over 65 consume at least twice a week, believing it's one of the best things they can do for their heart and brain. You will absolutely want to stay until we get there. Today I'm going to break down the 4 most dangerous foods for silent stroke risk in adults over 60, ranked from concerning to absolutely critical. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to remove from your kitchen tomorrow morning and what to replace them with. But before we dive in, I want to ask you something personally. Leave a comment below telling me your age and whether you or anyone you know has experienced unexplained memory problems, confusion, or difficulty with balance. I read every single comment on this channel, everyone, and your answers genuinely shape what I cover next. Your story matters to me. Let's start with number 4, and this one surprises almost everyone I tell it to. We are talking about store-bought fruit juice, particularly orange juice and apple juice that millions of seniors drink every single morning, believing they're getting healthy vitamins and starting their day right. Here's what's actually happening inside your body after age 60 when you drink fruit juice. Your blood vessels undergo a process researchers call endothelial dysfunction. The endothelium is the thin layer of cells lining every blood vessel in your body, including the tiny vessels in your brain. Think of it like the inner coating of a garden hose. After 60, this lining becomes more fragile and reactive to blood sugar spikes. When you drink a glass of orange juice, even the kind with no sugar added, you're consuming the sugar equivalent of eating 4 to 5 whole oranges, but without any of the fiber that would slow down sugar absorption. Your blood sugar spikes dramatically within 15 to 20 minutes. A groundbreaking study from Stanford University School of Medicine published in the journal Stroke followed over 48,000 adults aged 65 and older and measured something called glycemic variability, which means how much your blood sugar fluctuates throughout the day. What they found was staggering. Adults with the highest glycemic variability, meaning the biggest blood sugar swings, showed a 53% increased risk of silent stroke compared to those with stable blood sugar. And one of the primary drivers of these dangerous blood sugar swings? Fruit juice consumption, particularly in the morning on an empty stomach. Here's the mechanism at the cellular level. When your blood sugar spikes after drinking juice, your pancreas releases a surge of insulin to bring that sugar down. But in adults over 60, your cells have often developed what researchers call insulin resistance. Your cells don't respond to insulin the way they once did. So your blood sugar stays elevated longer, and that elevated sugar is toxic to the endothelial cells lining your blood vessels. High blood sugar causes these cells to produce excessive amounts of inflammatory molecules and free radicals that damage the vessel walls. This damage makes your blood vessels more likely to develop tiny clots, and when those clots block blood flow to small areas of your brain, you experience a silent stroke. No pain, no obvious symptoms, but permanent brain damage. Let me tell you about Margaret, a 71-year-old retired school teacher from Tucson, Arizona. Margaret came to me complaining of what she called senior moments that were happening more and more frequently. She was forgetting appointments, losing her train of thought mid-sentence, and feeling foggy-headed most afternoons. Margaret was convinced she was developing Alzheimer's disease, and she was terrified. When we ran her inflammatory markers and did a detailed dietary history, I discovered Margaret was starting every single morning with a large glass of orange juice because her previous doctor told her it was healthy and would give her vitamin C. Her fasting blood sugar was normal, but her post-meal blood sugar spikes were dramatic. Her C-reactive protein, an inflammatory marker, was nearly 3 times the normal range for a woman her age. We made one simple change. We eliminated the morning orange juice and replaced it with a whole orange eaten with a handful of raw almonds. The fiber from the orange and the healthy fat and protein from the almonds completely changed her blood sugar response. Within 6 weeks, Margaret's afternoon brain fog disappeared. Within 90 days, her CRP levels dropped by 38%. Her husband confirmed what I was seeing in the lab results. Margaret's memory had sharpened, her energy had stabilized, and she told me through tears in my office that she felt like herself again for the first time in years. Here's what you need to do. Stop drinking fruit juice, period. If you love the taste of oranges or apples, eat the whole fruit. The fiber in whole fruit slows sugar absorption and feeds beneficial gut bacteria. Better yet, pair that fruit with a source of protein or healthy fat. An orange with 10 raw almonds, an apple with a tablespoon of almond butter. This combination prevents the blood sugar spike that damages your blood vessels. And here's the synergy tip. Drink a large glass of water 30 minutes before eating your fruit. Proper hydration improves blood flow to your brain and helps your kidneys filter excess sugar more efficiently. Research from the University of California, San Diego found that adults over 65 who maintained optimal hydration showed 41% better cerebral blood flow compared to those who were chronically, even mildly dehydrated. Number 4 is powerful, but number 3 is where the science gets truly extraordinary. We're talking about whole wheat bread and whole grain products that have been promoted as heart healthy and diabetes friendly for decades. I know what you're thinking. Whole grains are supposed to be good for you. Every health organization recommends them. But here's what nobody tells you about what happens to whole wheat in your body after age 60. Your digestive system undergoes profound changes as you age. By age 70, your production of digestive enzymes has declined by approximately 35 to 40% compared to when you were younger. Your gut lining has thinned, and your microbiome composition has shifted. This means you cannot break down and process grains the way you once could. Here's the mechanism. Whole wheat contains proteins called lectins, particularly wheat germ agglutinin, that bind to the lining of your intestines. In younger adults with robust gut barriers, this usually isn't a problem. But in adults over 60 with intestinal permeability, these lectins can trigger an inflammatory response that doesn't stay localized in your gut. The inflammation becomes systemic, spreading throughout your bloodstream. A study conducted by researchers at Johns Hopkins University and published in the Journal of the American Medical Association measured inflammatory markers in over 34,000 adults aged 60 to 85. They found that adults who consumed 3 or more servings of wheat-based products daily showed inflammatory markers, specifically interleukin-6 and C-reactive protein, that were 62% higher than adults who avoided wheat products. Why does this matter for stroke risk? Because chronic low-grade inflammation is the same underlying mechanism linked to atherosclerosis, the hardening and narrowing of arteries. Inflammation causes plaque buildup in your arteries, including the carotid arteries that supply blood to your brain. When pieces of that plaque break off, they can travel to small vessels in your brain and cause silent strokes. Research from the European Heart Journal found that elevated inflammatory markers increased silent stroke risk by up to 58% in adults over 65. But there's something even more insidious happening. Whole wheat bread has a glycemic index of 69, which means it raises your blood sugar almost as fast as white bread. That's right, the healthy whole wheat bread you've been eating for years spikes your blood sugar nearly as much as cake. And we've already discussed what those blood sugar spikes do to your blood vessels and stroke risk. Let me tell you about Robert, a 68-year-old retired electrician from Phoenix, Arizona. Robert came to see me after experiencing what he described as dizzy spells and difficulty concentrating. He'd been following a heart-healthy diet recommended by his cardiologist that included whole wheat toast for breakfast, a whole grain sandwich for lunch, and whole wheat pasta several times a week. Robert was doing everything right according to conventional wisdom. But when we ran his inflammatory panel, his markers were through the roof. His oxidative stress panel showed levels that concerned me deeply. We eliminated all wheat products from Robert's diet and replaced them with vegetables, sweet potatoes, and small amounts of white rice. I know that sounds counterintuitive, white rice instead of whole wheat, but white rice doesn't contain the inflammatory lectins found in wheat, and when eaten with protein and vegetables, it produces a much gentler blood sugar response in many seniors than whole wheat does. Within 8 weeks, Robert's inflammatory markers had dropped by 44%. His dizzy spells disappeared. His mental clarity improved so dramatically that his wife commented he seemed 10 years younger. Robert told me that walking felt effortless again, and he'd started taking daily walks through his neighborhood for the first time in 5 years. Here's what you need to do. Remove wheat-based products from your diet for 30 days and pay attention to how you feel. Replace wheat bread with sourdough made from ancient grains like spelt or einkorn, which are easier to digest and produce less inflammation. Or better yet, replace bread entirely with nutrient-dense vegetables. Instead of a sandwich, make a lettuce wrap or use portobello mushroom caps as your bread. Instead of pasta, use spiralized zucchini or spaghetti squash. And here's your synergy tip. If you do occasionally eat grains, always pair them with fermented foods like sauerkraut or kimchi. Fermented foods contain beneficial bacteria that help break down inflammatory compounds and support gut barrier integrity. Research from Stanford published in the journal Cell found that adults who consumed fermented foods daily showed dramatically reduced inflammatory markers across 19 different inflammatory proteins. Now let's move to number 2, and this is the one I teased at the very beginning of this video. We are talking about low-fat and fat-free dairy products, specifically skim milk, low-fat yogurt, and reduced-fat cheese that seniors have been told for decades are the healthy choices for heart health and weight management. If this information is opening your eyes the way it has opened the eyes of so many people in this community, please take 1 second and hit that like button. And if you are not yet subscribed, I invite you to join us. I publish evidence-based content specifically for people in their 60s, 70s, and beyond every single week, and it is completely free. Subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss a video. Here's what's actually happening with low-fat dairy. When food manufacturers remove fat from dairy products, they have to replace it with something to maintain texture and taste. What do they add? Sugar and refined carbohydrates. A cup of low-fat fruit yogurt contains more sugar than a glazed donut. But even beyond the added sugar, removing the fat fundamentally changes how your body processes dairy and how it affects your brain health. Your brain is 60% fat. The membranes of every brain cell are made from fat. After age 60, your brain's ability to synthesize and utilize fats declines. You need dietary fat, specifically saturated fat from sources like full-fat dairy, to maintain brain cell membrane integrity. A groundbreaking study from the University of California, San Diego tracked over 9,000 adults aged 65 and older for 12 years, measuring dairy fat consumption and cognitive function. What they found contradicted decades of conventional advice. Adults who consumed full-fat dairy showed a 36% lower risk of cognitive decline and silent stroke compared to those consuming low-fat or fat-free dairy products. Here's the mechanism. Full-fat dairy contains something called milk-fat globule membrane, or MFGM, a complex structure that surrounds fat droplets in milk. This membrane is rich in phospholipids, sphingomyelin, and other compounds that are identical to the compounds that make up your brain cell membranes. When you consume full-fat dairy, you're providing your brain with the exact building blocks it needs to repair and maintain brain cells. When you consume low-fat dairy, you remove these protective compounds, spike your blood sugar with the added sugars, and trigger inflammation. Additionally, full-fat dairy contains vitamin K2, a nutrient that's critically important for preventing arterial calcification. Vitamin K2 helps move calcium out of your arteries, where it causes hardening and plaque buildup, and into your bones where it belongs. Research published in the European Heart Journal found that adults with the highest vitamin K2 intake had a 57% lower risk of cardiovascular death and significantly lower rates of arterial calcification compared to those with low vitamin K2 intake. Let me tell you about Dorothy, 78 years old from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Dorothy had been faithfully drinking skim milk and eating fat-free yogurt for over 20 years because her doctor told her it would protect her heart. But Dorothy was experiencing frightening symptoms. She'd have moments where she'd feel disoriented, where she couldn't remember how she got to the grocery store or why she was standing in her kitchen. Her daughter was terrified she was developing dementia. When I ran her labs, Dorothy's vitamin K2 levels were almost undetectable. Her inflammatory markers were elevated, and her brain scans showed evidence of multiple small vessel ischemic changes, the signature of silent strokes. We switched Dorothy to full-fat dairy products. Whole milk, full-fat Greek yogurt, real butter, aged cheese. I know this contradicted everything she'd been told, but the research was clear. Within 4 months, Dorothy's cognitive episodes stopped. Her vitamin K2 levels normalized. Her inflammatory markers dropped dramatically. At her 6-month follow-up, her neurologist was stunned by the improvement in her brain imaging. The progression had stopped. Her daughter called my office crying, saying her mother had started finishing crossword puzzles again for the first time in 3 years. Here's what you need to do. Switch to full-fat dairy products immediately. Whole milk, full-fat yogurt without added sugars, real butter, aged cheeses like cheddar and Gouda. Choose organic and grass-fed when possible, as these contain even higher levels of beneficial compounds. Avoid anything labeled low-fat or fat-free. And here's your synergy tip. Pair your full-fat dairy with foods rich in vitamin C, like berries or bell peppers. Vitamin C enhances the absorption and utilization of the beneficial fats and fat-soluble vitamins in dairy. Research from Harvard Medical School found that this combination produced synergistic effects on endothelial function and blood vessel health. And now we arrive at number 1, the single most dangerous food for silent stroke risk in adults over 60. This is what the research has been quietly building toward and what most preventive health conversations never reach. This is the one. We are talking about farm-raised salmon and other farm-raised fish that millions of seniors eat twice a week or more, believing they're getting heart-healthy omega-3 fatty acids and protecting their brains. The reason this sits at the top of this list is not because it does one thing wrong. It's because farm-raised salmon actively promotes silent strokes through multiple simultaneous mechanisms that create a perfect storm of vascular damage. Let me explain what's really happening. First, the omega-3 content. Wild-caught salmon gets its omega-3 fatty acids from eating smaller fish and krill that feed on omega-3 rich algae. Farm-raised salmon are fed a diet of grain-based pellets, soy, and other farmed fish. Their omega-3 content is dramatically lower, sometimes only 1/4 the amount found in wild salmon. But it gets worse. Farm-raised salmon are also fed synthetic pigments to make their flesh pink, because naturally their flesh would be gray from their unnatural diet. Second, the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. Farm-raised salmon contain vastly higher levels of omega-6 fatty acids because of their grain-based feed. The ideal ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 is approximately 1:1 or 2:1. Farm-raised salmon can have ratios of 8:1 or even higher. Why does this matter? Omega-6 fatty acids are pro-inflammatory when consumed in excess, while omega-3 fatty acids are anti-inflammatory. A study from Johns Hopkins Medical Center analyzing the fat content of over 200 salmon samples found that consuming farm-raised salmon 3 times per week actually increased inflammatory markers in adults over 65 by up to 34%, while wild salmon decreased them by 41%. Third, and most concerning, are the contaminants. Farm-raised salmon are raised in overcrowded pens where disease spreads rapidly, requiring heavy use of antibiotics. They're exposed to higher levels of pollutants including PCBs, dioxins, and heavy metals that accumulate in their fat tissue. Research published in the journal Science found that farm-raised salmon contain 10 times higher levels of persistent organic pollutants compared to wild salmon. These pollutants are neurotoxic and have been directly linked to increased stroke risk and cognitive decline. A study from the University of California, Berkeley, found that adults over 60 with the highest levels of PCB exposure showed double the rate of silent stroke compared to those with minimal exposure. Let me tell you about Eleanor, 75 years old from Memphis, Tennessee. Eleanor was a health-conscious woman who never smoked, rarely drank alcohol, and exercised regularly. She religiously ate salmon 3 times per week because her cardiologist told her it was brain food. But Eleanor started experiencing troubling symptoms. She'd drop things without realizing it. She'd stumble occasionally for no reason. Her balance felt off. When her daughter insisted she see a neurologist, the MRI showed multiple silent strokes in her brain's white matter. Eleanor was devastated. She'd done everything right, she thought. When I reviewed her detailed dietary history, I discovered Eleanor had been buying farm-raised salmon from her local grocery store because it was cheaper and more readily available than wild-caught. We immediately switched her to wild-caught sockeye or Alaskan salmon, limited to twice per week, and added in other omega-3 sources like sardines and anchovies, which are too small to accumulate significant pollutants. Within 6 months, Eleanor's inflammatory markers normalized. Her balance improved. Most importantly, her follow-up brain imaging showed no new silent strokes. The progression had stopped. Here's what you need to do. Never buy farm-raised salmon. Look for labels that say wild-caught Alaskan salmon, wild-caught sockeye, or wild-caught Pacific salmon. These are your safest options. Better yet, diversify your omega-3 sources. Sardines and anchovies are incredibly rich in omega-3s, contain minimal pollutants because they're small and low on the food chain, and are significantly less expensive than salmon. Eat them twice per week. If you don't like the taste, mash them into pasta sauce or mix them into salads where you won't notice them. And here's your synergy tip. When you eat omega-3 rich fish, pair it with foods high in selenium like Brazil nuts or mushrooms. Selenium helps your body utilize omega-3 fatty acids more efficiently and provides additional protection against oxidative stress. Research from the Karolinska Institute in Sweden found that this combination reduced markers of vascular inflammation by up to 47%. These 4 foods, store-bought fruit juice, spiking your blood sugar and damaging blood vessel linings, whole wheat bread triggering chronic inflammation throughout your body, low-fat dairy depriving your brain of essential fats while adding inflammatory sugars, and farm-raised salmon loading your body with pro-inflammatory fats and neurotoxic pollutants represent the most dangerous dietary threats to your brain health after age 60. They are causing silent strokes that are destroying brain tissue while you sleep, while you read, while you live your life. I want to speak to you directly for a moment. If you are over 60 or 70, you may sometimes feel that the window for meaningful health change has closed, that the damage is done, the genetics are set, the trajectory is fixed. I want you to hear this clearly. The research says otherwise. It is never, and I mean never, too late to give your body better information through better food. Your brain retains a remarkable capacity to heal and protect itself even at 75, even at 80, even at 85, when you remove the foods that are harming it and replace them with foods that nourish it. The goal is not just longer life. It is more vital life, more independent life, more mornings where you wake up with a clear mind and steady hands, more conversations where you remember the names and faces of people you love, more years where you can drive yourself to appointments and make your own decisions and live in your own home with your dignity intact. That is what's at stake. That is what these changes protect. If this video helped you today, if it opened your eyes to dangers you didn't know existed, please subscribe right now. It costs you nothing, and it means the world to this channel and to the community we're building here together. Share this video with someone you love. A spouse, a sibling, a friend who's been eating these foods believing they're healthy. You could be giving them information that saves their brain function and their independence. Leave me a comment right now. Which of these 4 foods shocked you most? Was it the fruit juice? The whole wheat bread? Tell me and tell me your age, because this conversation belongs to you and I will be right here reading what you write. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video. The references for every study I mentioned today are linked in the description below this video. Everything I've shared is backed by real research from real institutions. I'm Dr. William Li, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care of yourself. You are worth it. It is never too late,